Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're having a wonderful day today. Today I'm doing the wrap up of all the books that I read in March and April of this year. Now if you missed the last wrap up of this year, the first 2 months of the year, I'm now doing every 2 months wrap up because it helps that if I have a bit of a slump here and there where I only read 3 books, that I still have a whole video full of books. And that has really helped for these 2 months, because for one of these months I did in fact only read 3 books, and that's because in the middle of this sort of set of months I was slumping very hard. Now I am coming out of it a little bit, so I am very happy, but I still haven't as of now reached a 5-star in any books that I've read this year, and I think that's part of the reason why I have been slumping a little bit. But as a little teaser for the next wrap up, I think that we might be coming out of that really well. Okay, so let's break down my stats for the last 2 months. So in the last 2 months combined, I read a total of 9 books, and that equates to 4,628 pages all up. Now, my average rating for these 2 months has been 3.5. Without listening to me talk your ear off for too long, let's get into the books that I read during these 2 months. First, we're going to go over the DNFs that I had. Now, my first DNF for the month was The Raven Scholar by Antonia Hodgson. Acknowledging that this is a book that I can definitely come back to. This is one of those books where it was far too long and I was starting my reading slump and it just was taking me too long. I got to 60% through this book, which was a fair chunk of it, but ultimately I had to put it down if I was going to get through any other books this month, because it was taking me so long to get through this one. And the second book I DNF'd this month was Bring Me Their Hearts by Sarah Wolfe. I DNF'd this one at 20% through, and this one basically was just the tone of voice wasn't right for me, and it was coming across really young, but in the way that it was kind of irritating. And so I just decided that I had to put it down, and maybe it wasn't the book for me. The first book that I ended up completing was Crescent City, House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas, which received a 4-star. This is a reread for me. And the first time I read it through, I think I gave it a 4.25, but I'm no longer doing quarter ratings. So I rounded out that rating so it was a bit more concise in my thoughts. So because this is a reread, I have extra thoughts that I had from the first time reading it. But this is essentially an urban fantasy set in sort of a modern city sort of outlet, which is what an urban fantasy is. And it is following Bryce Quinlan, who is she's like a working class party girl. She works all day, parties all night, and we sort of follow her until a murder happens, and then she's sort of roped in to help the higher ups solve this murder. I think they're called the Archangels, solve this murder. So she's joined by a fallen angel to help her solve this murder. So she's joined by Hunt. And together they're trying to figure out who did this and why, basically. It's hard for me to say a lot about this book in the synopsis because there's a lot of plot points that I think are more shocking if you go in blind, honestly. So I'm not going to say anything else about the synopsis. I did appreciate this book more than when I read it the first time, don't get me wrong. Sarah J. Maas is an auto author for me. She's a perfect author for me. I've loved all her other series. I think that what was happening in this book that made it not reach the level that she normally reaches for me with a 5-star is purely my connection to the main characters. I think that I couldn't feel the chemistry between Hunt and Bryce for majority of the book. And it's not that, they weren't together, so of course you didn't feel it. It's that I just wasn't feeling that chemistry. I didn't feel like they matched each other. I actually think that I'm among very few that loves our main character Bryce. I think that she has a very particular sort of personality that I really like. I like her dynamic with her cousin, and I like her dynamic with her friends, and I don't know. I don't know why the dynamic with Hunt doesn't link well for me. Like, don't get me wrong, there are times in this book where I'm like, oh, I feel it here. But there's times when I'm like sitting there like, just leave her alone. What are you doing? You're annoying me. Go away. Go in that corner. So I don't know. This is a sort of book that obviously I've read it twice through. This time I read it on audiobook, and half of it was a graphic audio because I had it at my library and then my loan ran out. So I had to get a different version of it to finish it off. And I didn't like the graphic audio. I think that when you're listening to the graphic audio of this, or the version that I did, with the sound effects and everything, you lose the emotion that comes from when you're reading the words. So like there was a scene where he roared her name, and the graphic audio was like, Bryce, come back. But the writing was that he roared it with pain, and I didn't hear the pain in the voice that was calling her name. So it's just things like that didn't rub me the right way. I reckon I would have probably made it a 4.5 if that wasn't my experience with that audiobook. But yeah, like it's a book that I really, really enjoy, and I highly recommend it to anyone else. And it could also be the fact that I do have a little bit of trouble with urban settings as well in fantasy books, but I have enjoyed them before. So do with that what you will. But it is a great book, and I am looking forward to actually finishing this trilogy this year, because I have yet to read the second and third book, even though I've owned them for as long as they've been out. But with her releases coming at the end of the year, I feel that I have to read them to understand a lot of the connections that are going to come out in these new books. So I will be reading them in the future. You'll be hearing me talk about them in the future videos. But for now, I've just read the first one twice. That's how I started my month properly, when I started to finish books, and it did quite well for me. The next book I read was Blood on Her Tongue by Joanna van Veen, and I rated this one 3.5 stars. This is essentially set in the Netherlands in 1887, and it's following two twins. So the first twin has come back to be with the second twin because the second twin is ill and not doing well, and she is really, really obsessed with this bog body that they found, and it's like a centuries-old corpse. So the first twin, when she finds out that the doctor has diagnosed her sister with temporary insanity and intends to send her away, she fights to solve the mystery on why her sister is suffering this way. Now with this one, I can admit that it definitely reached the gothic atmosphere that it was aiming for. And the writing, although a bit grotesque, was beautiful in the way that it was written out. This is a book filled with sisterly connection that borders on obsession. And I feel like I wanted a little bit more in why. I wanted more depth into like why she treats her sister the way that she does and why their dynamic is that way. I fear that I missed out on something a little bit there. But this is also one of those books that's full of men that think they know better than women, and it's kind of women trying to find their own power in a world that sort of feels so out of control for them, and they don't really have the power over the men and their decision making. The reason that this book rubbed me a little bit the wrong way was I wanted more backbone for our first sister that was advocating for her sister. And we did get that, don't get me wrong. It just took a little bit longer than I anticipated, and that's my personal issue. I've been wanting more powerful women. I've been wanting more unapologetic protectiveness of their autonomy in themselves. And I feel like this woman at the start was too busy trying to become her sister, that when the time came to protect her sister, it took her a little bit longer than I wanted it. Which is fine, don't get me wrong. I like the atmosphere of this book was definitely exactly what you want in this sort of book, and I think that it did that well. I do want to read more books from this author. I think that her writing itself is really poetic and beautiful. Like, I've got saved at the library My Darling Dreadful Thing. I really want to read that. I've also got an ARC copy for Bone of My Bone that comes out this year, I believe. Look, I'm just really excited to get into them. So her writing is just really well done. It's just, I think the story for me, I wanted a stronger protagonist, if I'm being honest. She could have done the same things, I feel, and still get a little bit more oomph to her character, for lack of a better word. The next book I read was The Wind Weaver by Julie Johnson, and I rated this one 3.5 stars as well. So we're essentially living in a land that fears magic. So being a halfling, a half faith, half human, is a death sentence. And our main character, Raya, has been running for most of her life, but in the last couple of weeks, she's been running a lot harder because she's had people on her tail, and she's since been captured, and now she's set for execution. But right before they execute her, this commander comes in and realizes that she has a certain birthmark on her chest and decides to essentially rescue her from this situation. Later on after this, she finds out this birthmark means that she is a remnant of air. And so essentially she is a part of this group of 4 people that fate foretold would save them all and bring back the magic and restore the balance. The pace that this had at the start, I was paying attention to this. And then we had the middle of the book, which was just them traveling. And I think that lately I've been having trouble when majority of the book is traveling and there's basically nothing happening along the way. It's just constant, repetitive, get on the horse, get off the horse, get on the horse, get off the horse, get on the horse, get off the horse. And I just didn't like that it slowed down so much after the fast pace that we'd set. The fast pace did come back at the end. I also think the slow pace made it so I wasn't connecting with the relationship that was forming. This is not an enemies to lovers, by the way. This was advertised to me as an enemies to lovers epic romantasy. There's no part of this where they're enemies at the start at all. This is also one of those books where we're relying so heavily on the man to help her find her control and her power and her independence and her autonomy that it was pissing me off, because she kept doing what this one guy was saying and this other guy said something else and she was like, oh, it's contradicting. I don't have a mind of my own. What do I do? And I don't think I really liked that. It's also because there was no chemistry between them. There was no feeling to make me feel a connection to them. And I just feel like she would have been better off on her own. Like, yes, assist her, like rescue her by all means. Get her out of that situation. But leave her the heck alone. Like, honestly, I was also rolling my eyes at how much she just wasn't noticing. Like, oh no, there's fire. I wonder how the fire came here. Really? Like, it was obvious where it came from. Oh my God. And by the time I got the chemistry, by the time I got the connection between them, I had 70 pages left. And we get a connection for 5 seconds and then it's ripped away. Now, you cannot call that slow burn. That is not slow burn. That was just, how dare you? That was horrendous. I wanted to feel what they were feeling. I didn't want to feel it for 5 seconds and have it ripped away from me. Because, you know what? I don't want her with that man anymore. I want her with the other man. Actually, no, scratch that. I want her on her damn own. I want them to find the 4th person of their little quad of people that have these elemental powers, and I want her to be with that person or just be alone. I have a feeling the next person is going to be female, or I'm going to be really pissed off if it's like 3 men and her. I think another female needs to happen in the next book. I will read the next book, don't get me wrong. But this one, there were so many things that pissed me off. Don't get me wrong, I really appreciate that the main character has wind power instead of fire, ice. I wanted something different and I got that. And I do like that it's sort of going deeper into it as well. Like, as she's learning it, she's learning how to control it, but she's also learning what else it can do. And I actually really liked that aspect of the book. I liked when she was on her own, when she was making her own friends, when this man wasn't in the picture. I think I liked it more when she was just being her independent self. And I liked that a lot. And it actually gave me more of an interest in her character because she has been alone for so long. She thrives in that element. And I feel like that was done really, really well. I feel like I was very passionate at the start of this book, trying to tell you about it. And it may come across as me hating this book. I didn't hate this book. I think I just wanted more depth in her character without relying on a man to get there. Now, the next book is the first book that I read in April, which is Funny Story by Emily Henry, which I rated 4 stars. So we're basically following Daphne, and she's planning a wedding to her fiance, and they have this wonderful relationship. They're living together, and she's making the house into a home. Next minute, her fiance comes home and says, "I'm leaving you for my childhood best friend. See ya." And he sort of leaves, and then this other guy turns up, who is the now ex-boyfriend of the childhood best friend over here. And he got left by her for the same reason. And so they end up living together to help with rent and everything until she can get herself sorted and sort of move away from here, get a new job. And they sort of receive an invitation to their ex's wedding, and they decide to fake date and pretend that they're in a relationship now. And it goes from there. I really love Emily Henry books. This is my 3rd one that I've read from her. I read Book Lovers and I read Beach Read. I'm noticing a trend with me loving her is that the books that I'm reading from her have like a subplot of the career being to do with books, and I think that that is counting towards my enjoyment level because I am enjoying that aspect of it. I also love that so far the characters that she's reading is like a piece of me. It's like she is drawing a piece of my soul out and she's putting it on the page, and I'm really liking that about the characters because I can really vibe with them and I can really connect with them. I think the only reason that this remains at a 4-star and didn't reach a 5-star like her other books is I needed more catharsis from getting rid of those wedding supplies that she had in her cupboard. I think I needed more drama surrounding that. I needed her to burn them or like throw them in the trash, not off page getting rid of them. I wanted more empowerment from the getting rid of those things, honestly. Like, I love the chemistry between her and the other guy. I loved how they had to find themselves and love themselves before they could love each other. I love the journey they went on with that. I love her job. I love the part of her work that we were reading about. I loved her exploring this town and trying to fall in love with it. I just wanted more drama. I just wanted the catharsis that she needed from that. But other than that, the rest of the book was fantastic. The next book I read was Feybound by Sarah L. Arifi. I got this from the library during this month, and I rated this one 3 stars. So this is following Yiren, and she is a part of the Elven army. And one day after, she follows this sort of prophecy from her sister, because her sister's like a soothsayer. She can see futures by doing this thing with creatures. And because of her sister's prophecy, she ends up making a fatal mistake that results in her exile from the Elven lands. And while she's just been exiled, she comes up with this plan to get sort of favor back in the Elven lands so she can come back and get favor. But what happens when she is apprehended by some Fey warriors who are believed to be extinct until this moment? I did really enjoy this sort of magical world. I was enjoying the imagery that we were getting from this world. I loved the history and the world building, like all the depth that we've got in the background of this was really well done. I did also like the characters. I think that their connection was good. The new connections were a little bit iffy for me. I did like that there was a sort of element of magic in this that just sort of made sense. And it's also the fact that she's learning a new magic throughout this, but her using the techniques from the old magic that she used to use, she sort of makes it her own. And I really liked that about this sort of story. I do think that it got predictable at a point, and that's like sort of expected in a book like this for me, I think. But it's more that the prophecies were so easy to figure out that's why it got predictable. So you're like, oh no, this prophecy, what does it mean? And she's the whole time just going, oh, I don't know what that could mean. I'll just ignore it for a bit. Oh, that must be about my sister, when it clearly isn't. Just different things were predictable in that way. And I think that it was just easy to figure out, for me at least. I think I've read other reviews that have thought the same. And I did, throughout this, have a disconnect between the bond between person and beast. I think that it was almost like for a beast that's meant to be really intelligent and ancient to a certain extent, it was very childish, the voice that was happening. And I understood it at the start, because these beasts, it seems as though they don't have the intelligence to speak in their minds until they get this connection. I think that's what I gathered from it, at least. So I understand the childlike nature of it to that extent, but it was also too childlike in the things that they were doing and saying. For me, it was like being bonded to a puppy, but an ancient beast. I don't know. It's a little bit of a disconnect there for me. But like I said, the world was beautiful, and I am looking forward to where it could go from here, but I can see where it can improve, if you know what I mean. Okay, I'm back. I had to take a break because my SD card basically had a fit at me. So the next book that I read in the month of April was The Rights of the Starling by Devney Perry, which is the sequel to Shield of Sparrows. So I read this basically as soon as it came out. I went and bought it and started reading it that day. Basically, this series, if you didn't see my last wrap-up video where I read the first one, in this series, we're in a land called Caloundra, and we're in a sort of world where the gods created monsters to remind the humans to kneel. And Odessa is the daughter of a king, but her sister is the one that's set to be in an arranged marriage. So Odessa's sort of put to the background. She wears really grey clothes, really like invisible sort of to everyone around her. And her sister is set to marry, under the Shield of Sparrows, this neighbouring prince. It turns out when the prince arrives, he basically demands that he marry Odessa instead. And it pulls Odessa into this plot that her father has to infiltrate this other kingdom and find out all these secrets from them. And so now she has to do that in place of her sister. And she gets taken off to this kingdom, married into this kingdom, I should say. Essentially, as normal, the monsters in this series are very vivid to me. I really like how they're described, and I can really see them and feel them when I'm reading these books. I will say that this one had not as many monsters. This is definitely one of those books, again, that has a lot of traveling. First half of this book is just traveling. Constant, tedious traveling, and it's between two different people, because we get a new perspective in the second book and they're traveling, and then we get our normal perspective and she's traveling, and they're all traveling separately. And I think that that's the moment that I realized that it's the traveling. It's the tedious, monotonous traveling that is making my reading experience a little bit harder with these sorts of fantasy books. This book was definitely everything that I desired. The first book in this series is a 4-star. This one's a 3.5, purely because half of it is just traveling. But the reveals in this book, flawless. I loved everything that was happening. I am so into this series that I read someone else's wrap up of it to go over it, make sure I didn't miss anything that someone else might have seen. I will say that some of the things were a little bit predictable, but the main reveal wasn't predictable. It's like I got a false sense of security, and then I was shocked to say the least. But I like how this book, it's not this last book, I think this is going to be a trilogy. I like how this book was sort of a bridge into the next book. I like that we answered a lot of the questions that we had in the first book. And when we're going into the third book, it's interesting that I don't know where it will go from here. Like, I get a gist of what's going to happen, but so many things could happen. And we still have so many questions, and we still have so many things that need to be solved, that I am very excited for the third one. It has been announced. Title's not released. Again, the second one only just came out, and I bought the second one, and the next day the other one was released, and I'm like, okay, so we've got a third one coming. We also need to acknowledge too that during this book I was coming out of such a huge reading slump. This book was the second book that was yanking me out. Feybound definitely yanked me out of the reading slump. This book was like tugging harder to get me out of that reading slump. We're acknowledging that I was having trouble reading slump, but also I was having trouble with the fact that I hadn't had a 5-star this year, and I was hoping that this would be the one, and it clearly wasn't the one. But that's not to say the book wasn't good. The book was great. I love the new monsters we had incorporated in this. That was really good. A lot of my expectations were met and exceeded at the same time. I purely, the lower rating, I think, is just the traveling, because I can't put up with that for half a book when you have such a massive book, and that could have been cut down more. Like, this book was over 500 pages and it could have been less than that just by making the traveling scenes a little thinner. And I think it would have been perfect then. I do like that the incessant questions that the main character had in the first book were not continuing in the second book. I like that she actually had some confidence with herself. And when she was asking for answers, it wasn't just tedious, incessant, over and over again questions. And I love that the plot and the world building that was continued in this book wasn't based on the unsteady legs of her questions. I love that that got fixed. That was the whole reason that the first book got a 4-star in the first place. Otherwise, it would have been a 5-star. And this one, it fixed that, but became tedious in other areas, if you know what I mean. So someone hold me until the next book comes out, but I will definitely be on the edge of my seat until that next book, because I need to know how this all gets solved. I need it in my life so damn bad. The next book I read was If He Had Been With Me by Lauren Nowlin. I rated this one 3 stars. Now, this is one of those books that's tough for me to give a synopsis of it, because even the Goodreads blurb gives away the ending, and even the back of the book gives away the ending. So I will do my best. So basically, we're following this teenager, and she's sort of recounting her history with this boy who is really connected with her family. Like, their mums are best friends. And she's been connected with him for so long, but for some reason, when they went into high school, they sort of drew apart a little bit, and they had their separate groups of friends. And it's basically her high school experience trying to sort of survive without this person in her life anymore, because he's like over there with this friend group, and she's in a total opposite friend group, and she's with someone else and he's with someone else. It's a whole thing. That's basically what it is. It's just a high school experience between these two people that used to have a connection and now no longer do. It's hard for me to say much about this book, like I said, because it's been spoiled in so many ways, and I think that was the detriment of my reading experience. I bought this book because someone told me it was going to make me bawl my eyes out. Multiple people said that. It was going to make me cry hysterically, and at the time I wanted to feel something when I read books. I wanted them to evoke emotions. It's the whole reason why I started reading horror, because I wanted to see if a book could scare me. And this one did not make me cry, did not attach to me with my emotions as much as I wanted it to. I think it was the voice of the writing, the character itself. I think because she was coming across really like an immature person writing a book, because she portrays herself as trying to be a writer, like she wants to be a writer in the future. And the way it was written, like, we're in a modern setting, and she kept talking sort of, or referring to their mums as sort of in an older style sort of talking, like the mothers wouldn't let us do this, and mother wouldn't let me do this, and mother and father and stuff like that. I think that I was having trouble with what age she was throughout. I could grasp sort of what age group we were in, but by the end of the book, I feel that she was still too immature for her reactions to things, for a start, but also to embrace what happens at the end as much. So I skipped chapter 1 in this book as well, because it gave away the ending. And I acknowledge that there's a journey to the ending. I wanted more character growth in her maturing as it went, and also with what happened at the end, it forcing maturity, I feel, on her. So there was just a lot of things that didn't rub me the right way, and it has been on hold since off my bookshelves. It's just, I don't think it was it for me, and I think it would be a better experience for someone else if they read it, honestly. The next book I read was The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.L. Clune, and I rated this one 3.5 stars. I really enjoyed this book. I sped through it when I was reading it. It was very easy to read, very enjoyable, cozy sort of book. We're following Linus Baker, and he lives alone with a cat, And he's a caseworker at the department in charge of magical youth. And his job is to basically oversee the government-sanctioned orphanages of these magical children. And he's put on an assignment so that's highly classified, and he travels off and he's meant to report on this orphanage out in the Cerulean Sea, in an island, where he's got to report back to them if things are going wrong, if it's a safe environment for the children, if he approves, doesn't, whatever. And he inadvertently, while being there, forms a connection with these children. I think that my experience with this was really enjoyable for a start. I just feel like, for me, I wanted a little bit more depth into why he got connected to the children. I get the reason that he got a connection, but I think I wanted more depth in his journey, in his mind to that decision, rather than, I just wanted more. I wanted more detail on why, how, when, where, who, everything. I think that I can acknowledge where this is such a good book. I think I would have thought that at a different time, I feel. But we're also acknowledging that I don't normally read books from a older male perspective. And a lot of the things that he was doing, I understood. And a lot of things he was doing, I did not understand. But the writer allows you to sort of have your own understanding of it as well. And that's what's so good about this writing, is that it sort of gives you a different perspective while you're in his perspective. Like, you can see around his perspective a little bit more. And he is just having a really nice journey in this book. And I do like how it ended. I do like how visceral of a reaction his realization was at the end of this. And I think that's what brought it up a little bit for me in the rating. I think that's what gave it the 0.5 and the 3.5 stars. But I read this for my local book club, and I've only seen one other reaction to it so far because we haven't met for book club yet. And she was sort of on the same page as me. She really enjoyed it, but she wanted a little bit more depth in the children and everything. I think that would have been a better experience for both of us if that was done a little bit better. And the last book I read was Wayward by Amelia Hart. And I rated this one 3 stars. I listened to this via audiobook, which I think actually helped my experience because I don't typically hold a lot of focus in books that go between timelines. So this one's following 3 timelines, the same family generational, but at different times in life, and they're all women. The first perspective we're following is in 2019, and this woman has inherited her aunt's manor, and she's using this as an opportunity because she's just found out she's pregnant to escape her abusive husband. And she sort of runs away to this manor and starting this whole new life of her own. Next, we're following someone in 1942, right in the middle of World War II. And she's a young girl, about 16, and she is sort of living with her dad and her brother. She's a bit disconnected from the world, and she's sort of just trying to get through life. She has a connection to insects, and she doesn't know a lot about her mother because her father is hiding a lot of the details about her mother and her death. And then we're following someone else in 1619 Scotland, and she is on trial for witchcraft. And I think following the 3 different perspectives did connect well in the end. The way that they intertwined was really well done. There's a lot of things in this book that is very confronting to listen to or read about. And I think that a lot of the time I had to sort of just pause it and then take a moment because I was so pissed off at so many men in this book. I swear to God, I wanted to punch some of these men. We're sort of following these women as they try and survive this patriarchy that they're living in. If you're reading this book, this is definitely going to bring out some feminine rage. Overall, I think this is a really good book on the historical portrayals of witches, and it's sort of surprising how each one was somehow written so different, each character. You could tell they were separate people. I feel like at the end of it, I really just wanted them to find their strength in themselves rather than realizing they have strength because they have magic, if you know what I mean. It didn't quite reach that for me at the end, which is ultimately why it stays at a 3 star. But I do also enjoy that this was written by an Australian author. But yeah, I did enjoy it, but there were issues that I had with the power of women and what it was reliant on. That's about all. I highly recommend it. I think it's a fantastic book. Just be warned, lots of trigger warnings. It is a very confronting book, and a lot of scenes that do happen in the book surrounding domestic violence and sexual assault. So that's all the books I read in the months of March and April. I am now coming out of the book slump. I think I'm out of it fully. We've got some good reading so far in the first 2 books that I've read in May, and I'm really excited to see what the rest of May and June brings until the next bi-monthly wrap-up that I'm doing. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe. All of the things that you need to do. I'd love to build a little community over here where we just talk nonsense about books all the time. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your month and your reading is just as glorious as mine is turning out to be. But until then, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.